Have you ever looked at your bank account and wondered if you're completely failing at this whole money thing, or if maybe everyone else is just as confused as you are? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into 10 absolutely mind-blowing statistics about how the average person handles their finances, and I guarantee some of these numbers are going to make you feel a lot better about your situation, while others might be a serious wake-up call. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time analyzing financial data and figuring out why most people seem to be stuck in this endless cycle of earning money just to spend it all over again. If you're someone who actually wants to understand where you stand compared to everyone else and maybe even get ahead of the pack, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if these statistics end up surprising you as much as they surprised me. Before we jump into these jaw-dropping numbers, let me tell you why understanding these statistics isn't just about satisfying your curiosity. When you know what normal actually looks like when it comes to money, you can make much better decisions about your own financial future. It's like knowing the speed limit before you start driving. You need context to make smart choices. So let's start with our first shocking statistic, and this one comes straight from the world of car buying, which is honestly where a lot of people's financial dreams go to die. More than 1 in 4 people who trade in their cars for new ones are actually underwater on their loans. That means they owe more money on their current car than it's actually worth. We're talking about over 26% of trade-ins having negative equity, with the average amount being nearly $7,000 in the hole. Think about that for a second. These people are essentially paying money just to get rid of their car before they can even think about buying a new one. Here's what makes this even more ridiculous. Nearly 1/3 of these underwater trade-ins have between $5,000 and $10,000 of negative equity. So imagine walking into a dealership thinking you're going to trade in your car, only to discover that you need to write a check for $8,000 just to walk away from the vehicle you already own. It's like paying rent on an apartment after you've already moved out. This disaster is largely thanks to those extended car loans that seem so appealing when you're sitting in the dealer's office. You know, the ones where they convince you to stretch your payments out to 84 or even 96 months because it makes the monthly payment look more manageable. What they don't tell you is that you'll be paying on that car longer than most people keep their phones, and the car will be worth practically nothing by the time you're done. The pandemic made this whole situation even worse because car prices went absolutely insane due to supply chain issues, so people were buying overpriced vehicles with long-term loans, creating the perfect recipe for financial disaster. Now let's move on to our second statistic, which involves something that's becoming more popular every day and is quietly destroying people's financial discipline. The average person using buy now, pay later services carries a balance of over $700. Now, if you're not familiar with buy now, pay later, it's that tempting little option that pops up when you're shopping online, telling you that you can split your purchase into easy installments instead of paying for everything up front. Sounds harmless, right? Wrong. Here's the kicker. Over 24% of people using these services have made late payments, and nearly 40% of Americans who use buy now, pay later actually end up regretting it afterward. But wait, it gets better. The people using these services the most aren't broke college students or people struggling to make ends meet. It's actually high-income earners making between $100,000 and $150,000 per year. Think about that for a moment. People who are earning 6 figures are still using payment plans to buy things they could easily afford to pay for outright. It's like watching someone making $100,000 a year put a coffee on layaway. This tells us something pretty important about human psychology and money. Having more income doesn't automatically make you better with money. In fact, it might just give you more creative ways to mess up your finances. Our third statistic is going to make you want to check your bank account right now and probably switch where you keep your money. There's over $18 trillion sitting in deposits at commercial banks across America, and 82% of people aren't keeping their cash in high-yield savings accounts. Most people are just letting their money sit in regular savings accounts, earning practically nothing, while inflation slowly eats away at their purchasing power like a financial termite. Let me put this in perspective for you. If you have $5,000 in a typical savings account earning the national average of 0.4% interest, you'll make about $20 in a year. $20. That's not even enough to buy lunch at most places. But if you move that same money to a high yield savings account earning 3.5%, you'd make $175 for literally doing nothing except opening a different account. That's enough extra money to buy those headphones you've been wanting or treat yourself to a nice dinner. The crazy part is that people are essentially throwing away free money because they can't be bothered to spend 30 minutes opening a high yield savings account. It's like walking past a $20 bill on the sidewalk every month and just leaving it there because picking it up seems like too much work. Now, here's a statistic that's going to make you either feel really good about yourself or realize you need to make some serious changes. 60% of Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense. We're talking about more than half the country being one car repair or medical bill away from financial chaos. When faced with an unexpected expense, 25% of people say they would put it on a credit card, which is basically just kicking the problem down the road and making it more expensive. What's particularly concerning is how this breaks down by generation. 34% of Gen Z has absolutely no emergency savings at all. Zero, zip, nothing. And for the first 3 generations, Gen Z, Millennials, and Gen X, about 1/3 have some emergency savings, but not enough to cover 3 months of expenses. This means that the majority of working Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, regardless of how much money they make. They might have nice cars, trendy clothes, and the latest gadgets, but when something unexpected happens, they're completely unprepared. It's like building a house without a foundation. Everything looks great until the first storm hits. Speaking of bank accounts, our 5th statistic reveals exactly how much money people actually have sitting in their checking and savings accounts. The median bank account balance in America is around $8,000. Now, before you start feeling too good or too bad about that number, remember that this varies dramatically based on how much money you make and how old you are. If you're young and just starting your career, having $8,000 saved is actually pretty impressive. But if you're 50 years old and only have $8,000 to your name, you might want to have a serious conversation with yourself about your financial trajectory. What's interesting is how income affects these numbers. People earning over $150,000 per year have a median bank balance of nearly $34,000, while people in lower income brackets have significantly less. This might seem obvious, but it illustrates an important point. Your ability to save money is directly tied to how much money you make, which is why focusing on increasing your income is often just as important as learning how to budget better. Our 6th statistic is going to blow your mind, especially if you've ever put money into a retirement account and then just assumed everything was taken care of. 28% of people who roll money into an IRA leave it sitting in cash. That's right. More than 1 in 4 people think they're investing for retirement when they're actually just storing money in what amounts to a very expensive piggy bank. It's like buying a sports car and then using it as a planter for your garden. Here's what happens. Someone leaves their job and decides to roll their 401k into an IRA, which sounds like a responsible adult thing to do. They transfer the money, pat themselves on the back for being financially savvy, and then completely forget that they actually need to invest that money into something. So there it sits, earning practically nothing while inflation slowly turns their retirement dreams into retirement nightmares. The really painful part is when people discover this mistake after years of thinking they were building wealth. Imagine putting $5,000 a year into an IRA for 5 years, thinking you're investing in the stock market, only to find out you've basically been stuffing cash under a very sophisticated mattress. That's $25,000 that could have been growing, but instead just sat there like a lazy teenager refusing to get a job. Even worse, when you roll money from a 401k to an IRA, your investments often get converted back to cash automatically. So you might have been perfectly invested in an S&P 500 fund at your old job, but when that money moves to your new IRA, it just becomes cash again. Like, the brokerage firms don't automatically invest it for you because apparently that would be too helpful. This brings us to our seventh statistic, which is actually good news if you're patient enough to take advantage of it. The stock market doubles approximately every 10 years, despite all the drama, the crashes, the recessions, the panics, and the endless stream of financial news designed to make you think the world is ending. The market has consistently delivered wealth to people who can sit still and not panic. But here's the catch. 38% of years since 1930, the S&P 500 has fallen between 10 and 20% during the year, and 16% of years it's fallen more than 20%. So if you want to benefit from that long-term doubling, you have to be willing to watch your account balance go down sometimes. It's like riding a roller coaster where you know you'll end up higher than where you started, but you have to survive all the drops along the way. The people who miss out on this wealth creation are usually the ones who get scared and sell when things look bad, or who sit on the sidelines waiting for the perfect time to jump in. If you miss just the 10 best days in the market over 30 years, you could lose more than half of your potential gains. It's like showing up late to the party and missing all the good food. What makes this even more frustrating is that nobody can predict which days will be the best days. They often happen right after some of the worst days, when everything looks terrible and people are convinced the world is ending. So the strategy that actually works is the most boring one possible. Just keep investing consistently and don't try to be clever about timing. Our eighth statistic hits close to home for anyone who's ever dreamed of owning property. The median age for buying a first home is now 38 years old. Back in 1991, that number was 28. So in just 3 decades, homeownership has been pushed back by almost 10 years. It's like the American dream decided to take a really long lunch break. This shift isn't happening because young people today are less responsible or ambitious than previous generations. It's happening because housing has become ridiculously expensive relative to incomes. According to recent data, the typical homebuyer needs to earn over $112,000 per year to afford the median-priced home. That's about $25,000 more than the typical household actually makes. So we have an entire generation of people watching house prices rise faster than their salaries, like trying to catch a bus that keeps speeding up every time you get close to it. Many people are doing the math and realizing that renting and investing the difference might actually make more financial sense than stretching themselves thin to buy an overpriced house. The funny thing is that previous generations keep asking why young people don't just buy houses like they did, as if houses still cost 3 times your annual salary instead of 8 times your annual salary. It's like asking why people don't just buy cars for $500 anymore. The world has changed, but somehow the expectations haven't caught up. This brings us to our 9th statistic, which might make you feel either really good or really motivated depending on where you currently stand. To be in the top 10% of Americans by net worth, you need just over $1 million. That might sound like an impossible mountain to climb, but here's the thing that most people don't realize. Net worth isn't just about how much money you make, it's about what you do with the money you make. You could have a top 10% income but still not be in the top 10% of net worth if you spend everything you earn. Meanwhile, someone making a modest salary who consistently saves and invests could end up with more wealth than someone earning twice as much who can't control their spending. The key insight here is that tracking your net worth actually helps it grow. When you start paying attention to the number and watching it increase over time, you naturally start making better financial decisions. It's like stepping on a scale every day when you're trying to lose weight. The simple act of measuring creates awareness, and awareness leads to better choices. But what's really interesting about net worth is how it compounds over time. The difference between someone who starts building wealth in their 20s versus their 30s isn't just 10 years, it's exponential. Every year you wait to start seriously building wealth is like missing the first few minutes of a movie where they explain who all the characters are. You can still follow along, but you're always playing catch up. The really encouraging part is that reaching that $1 million milestone isn't reserved for people who inherit money or win the lottery. It's achievable for most people with decent incomes who can resist the urge to spend every penny they earn. The problem is that we live in a culture that celebrates spending and treats saving like some kind of punishment, which brings us to our final and most mind-blowing statistic of all. And this one is going to completely change how you think about building wealth. Your savings rate matters way more than your investment returns, especially when you're starting out. Here's a perfect example that proves this point. Imagine two people both earning $100,000 per year racing to reach their first $100,000 in savings. Person A saves 10% of their income every year but only earns 1% returns on their investments. Person B saves 5% of their income but earns 10% returns, which is literally 10 times better than person A. Who do you think reaches $100,000 first? If you guessed person B with the amazing returns, you'd be wrong. Person A reaches the goal in about 9.5 years, while person B takes nearly 12 years. Even though person B was earning 10 times the return, they still lost the race because they were saving half as much. This completely flips the script on what most people think wealth building is about. Everyone gets obsessed with finding the perfect investment or timing the market or picking the next big stock when they should be focused on the much more boring task of just saving more money. It's like spending hours researching the fastest car when what you really need to do is just start driving. The math here is pretty brutal, but also pretty encouraging when you're starting from zero. The amount you save completely dominates the returns you earn. A 2% difference in your savings rate will have a much bigger impact than a 2% difference in your investment returns, but somehow everyone wants to be the investing genius instead of the disciplined saver. This is why people who make $50,000 and save 20% of it often end up wealthier than people who make $100,000 and save 5%. The high earner is probably driving a nicer car and living in a better apartment, but the modest earner who saves consistently is quietly building actual wealth. The beautiful irony is that once you have substantial money invested, then returns start to matter more. When you have $500,000 invested, a 1% difference in returns equals $5,000 per year. But when you have $5,000 invested, that same 1% difference is only $50 per year. You can probably find $50 in your couch cushions. What this means practically is that if you're just starting your wealth building journey, stop worrying so much about finding the perfect investment strategy and start worrying about increasing your savings rate. Cut the subscriptions you don't use, cook at home more often, drive your car for an extra year or two before upgrading. Find ways to earn more money. All of these boring, unglamorous actions will have a much bigger impact on your future wealth than trying to pick winning stocks. The people who understand this principle are the ones who end up financially independent, while their friends are still arguing about cryptocurrency and wondering why their investment accounts never seem to grow. Consistent saving beats brilliant investing almost every single time, especially in the beginning. So there you have it. 10 statistics that reveal exactly how the average person handles money. And honestly, most of these numbers should be both encouraging and terrifying at the same time. Encouraging because the bar is set pretty low, which means beating average isn't that difficult. Terrifying because being average with money means you'll probably spend your entire life stressed about finances and never really getting ahead. The good news is that now you know what normal looks like, and normal isn't working very well for most people. Every single one of these statistics represents an opportunity to do better than the majority of your peers by making slightly smarter choices with your money. The reality is that most people are sleepwalking through their financial lives, making the same mistakes over and over again while wondering why they can't get ahead. But here's the thing that gives me hope. Every single statistic we've covered today represents a choice. You can choose to be part of the 26% who go underwater on car loans, or you can buy used and avoid that trap entirely. You can join the 82% who leave money on the table with low-yield savings accounts, or you can spend 30 minutes opening a high-yield account and start earning what your money deserves. The beautiful truth is that beating these averages doesn't require you to be a financial genius or inherit a trust fund. It just requires you to be slightly more intentional with your money than the typical person. And frankly, that bar is set embarrassingly low. If you can avoid drowning in car payments, resist the temptation of buy now, pay later, actually invest your retirement money instead of leaving it in cash and save more than 6% of your income, you're already lapping most of the competition. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. The question isn't whether you can afford to start making better choices with your money. The question is whether you can afford not to. Which of these statistics shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if this video opened your eyes to where you stand financially, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started on this journey to financial sanity.